Who is Fulgrim? Fulgrim is the Primarch of the Emperor's Children, one of 20 Primarchs created by the Emperor in the earliest days of the Imperium, just after the end of the Age of Strife. Fulgrim, like the other Primarchs, was sucked from Terra by the gods of chaos and placed on a faraway world in an attempt to prevent the coming age of the Imperium. Constantly seeking to emulate the Emperor by perfecting himself, Fulgrim's obsession bred a hubris that drove him to eventually become consumed by the chaos god Slaanesh. Tulia, Corin, and Solax were laborers of the resource-poor world of Chemos, sent to investigate the meteorite impact. Sent without transport, the three had to take shelter from a wire storm in an abandoned factory. When they reached the impact site, they didn't find a fallen satellite nor spacecraft. They found an ever-shifting mass of light. Solax was wary, but Corin felt that it was harmless. Corin watched the light take shape, and it touched his mind, learning everything he did before it took the shape of a perfectly formed baby boy. Solax wanted to kill the child, seeing it as a burden on their resources, but the child had entranced Corin and refused. Tulia shot Solax, and neither of them felt any guilt over killing him to save the perfect baby. Noticing that a stream of pure water had formed where the baby had landed, Corin decided to name the child after the water-bringer of Chemos' creation myth, Fulgrim. Fulgrim spent his early years as a humble factory worker, but soon became a legend in his own right. At half the age of his fellow workers, he was able to fulfill his obligations to the continual running of the fortress factory of Calyx with ease. He quickly grew to understand the technology he had to work with and began to modify it, increasing efficiency dramatically. By the time he was 15 years of age, Fulgrim had risen from the rank of worker to become one of the executives ruling the settlement. Learning of the gradual deterioration of both Calyx and all the other settlements of Chemos, Fulgrim decided that he would save his world. Under Fulgrim's leadership, teams of engineers traveled far from their factory fortress, reclaiming and repairing many of the far-flung mining outposts. As minerals poured back into Calyx, Fulgrim supervised the construction of more sophisticated and energy-efficient machinery. As recycling efficiency grew to the point where Chemos was producing a surplus for the first time in years, Fulgrim began to foster a reemergence of art and culture, aspects of humanity sacrificed in the struggle for survival. The other settlements allied themselves with Calyx, and 50 years after arriving on Chemos, Fulgrim was its sole leader. It was not long after this that the planet's isolation came to an end. From the gray sky came a flight of dropships, armored and battle-scarred, each bearing the same symbol, a two-headed eagle. On hearing of this, some fragment of memory stirred in Fulgrim. Chemos had no formal army, but the dropship's landing zone had been surrounded by the caretakers, the police soldiers responsible for maintaining order in the factory fortresses. Fulgrim sent word to the caretakers to stand down and allow the visitors from above into Calyx. In his Spartan quarters, Fulgrim was faced by armored warriors from the stars. Their faces bore the scars of many battles, and from their shoulders hung scrolls listing their achievements. Their armor and weapons were finely worked, and their banners and pennants were works of art. Fulgrim recognized that these men were not merely advanced, but civilized. His lost brothers from the stars had preserved the arts he had longed to return to Chemos. From the midst of these warriors stepped their leader, the Emperor of Humanity. Fulgrim surveyed him, and without a word knelt and offered his sword. On that day, Fulgrim swore to serve the Imperium with all his heart. From the Emperor, Fulgrim learned of his distant world of Terra, of the great crusade to reclaim the sundered galaxy, and of his own origins. It is unknown when exactly this event occurred. However, it is recorded that the construction of a starship for the Primarch of the Third Legion was completed around 160 years before the beginning of the Horus Heresy. Traveling to Terra to meet his new legion, Fulgrim learned that an accident had destroyed the majority of the gene seed designated for his legion, and without their Primarch, replacing it was a slow and laborious process. Fulgrim came to address the 200 space marines of his legion, and the words he spoke were said to inspire the Emperor so much that he named the legion the Emperor's Children, and allowed them to bear the sign of the Aquila, the double-headed eagle that was the Emperor's personal symbol, on their power armor. Fulgrim became driven by the notion that his legion would strive to live up to this honor and the perfection of the Emperor and his vision of imperial culture. This drive to achieve perfection soon applied to all things the Primarch and his legion became concerned with, from military tactics to the embrace of artistic culture that didn't exist on Chemos to their very appearances. Fulgrim was a particularly imposing sight, with shimmering white shoulder-length hair, large friendly-seeming eyes, and a mouth that was never far from a smile. His armor was of the finest quality and intricately decorated. Over it, he often wore one of a variety of high-collared cloaks. Fulgrim was anxious to make his contribution to the Great Crusade, but the comparatively small size of his legion meant that the Emperor's children were placed under the command of Horus and his Luna Wolves. Horus and Fulgrim grew close to one another while pacifying the eastern fringe. Eventually swelled by recruits from both Chemos and Terra, Fulgrim was soon able to lead a crusade of his own, bringing countless worlds into the light of the Imperium. Fulgrim sought perfection and spectacle in these campaigns, as demonstrated when he took the world of Bazaz with only 7 men, despite nearly dying in the process. Fulgrim also established a close friendship with his brother Ferrus Manus, who also attempted to purge imperfection from himself. Ferrus and Fulgrim eventually came to each try to build the perfect weapon, resulting in Fulgrim crafting Forgebreaker and Ferrus Fireblade. The two exchanged weapons, and they became synonymous with their prospective Primarchs thereafter. In the later stages of the Crusade, the Emperor's children soon made a name for themselves during the Crusade, battling fearsome enemies such as the Mega-Arachnids and Diasporics. During this time, the Emperor's children initiated the cleansing of Leran, a campaign that required great effort, dedication, and sacrifice from the Imperial forces. At the conclusion of this campaign, Fulgrim acquired a trophy from the field of battle, a Xenos-manufactured sword recovered from Leran Temple, is known as the Silver Blade of Laer. He would begin to wield this sword more often than the Fire Blade, his customary personal weapon. With the benefit of hindsight, it can be recognized that the Larian sword was a demon weapon. It is now believed that this demon sword began to exert a strong chaotic influence over Fulgrim, and that the forces he had deployed against the Lier may have become tainted by the chaos power Slanesh. It is in this perilous spiritual condition that Fulgrim found himself at the center of the emerging Horus heresy. Fulgrim himself met with the renowned Farseer Eldrad Uthran of Eleuthue in the Median world Tarsus, in which the Farseer attempted to warn Fulgrim of Horus's grievous wounding at the hands of Eugene Temba and his Enethame, and how he was slowly beginning to turn to chaos as he recuperated. Fulgrim reacted with outrage at the Farseer's accusations due to his close friendship with Horus, second only to his bond with Ferrus Manus. This was spurred on by the influence of Fulgrim's Larian blade, which was infused with Slaneshi entity. Fulgrim furiously attacked Eldred alongside his captains and the Phoenix Guard, destroying both Carian Goldhelm, an ancient and revered Wraith Lords, as well as the avatar of Cain in the process, forcing Eldred and his bewildered forces to withdraw. This victory led to Fulgrim's subsequent destruction of various Eldar Maiden worlds, using virus bombs as a means to end the supposed treachery of Eldar. Whilst the exact timing and placement of it varies between versions of the story, it is clear that Fulgrim soon met Horus in person, demanding a personal account of his actions. Instead, Horus was able to sway Fulgrim to his cause. Fulgrim's respect for Horus allowed chaos to find its way into Fulgrim's heart, destroying Fulgrim's loyalty to Terra, and replacing it with burning desire to destroy the man who held humanity back from the perfection of Fulgrim desired. Fulgrim was immediately sent to meet with Ferrus Manus, Primarch of the Iron Hands. Great bonds of friendship and brotherhood existed between them, and Fulgrim felt that he could convince Ferrus of the righteousness of Horus's cause. However, he was wrong, and their meeting did not go well and concluded in violence. When next the brothers met, it would be as enemies. Their path chosen, the chaotic rot spread quickly from Fulgrim to his lieutenants, the Lord Commanders of the Legion, then to company and squad leaders, and finally, all but a bare handful of Marines followed Slaanesh rather than the Emperor. Perfection became perfect hedonism. Fulgrim's mental state quickly deteriorated. He began talking to a painting by the Serena de Angelis and killed the sculptor Austin Delafour after he inadvertently slighted the Primarch. When the Loyalist legions arrived in the Istvan system, the Emperor's children were at the forefront of the fighting, aiding in the massacre of their former brethren. During the infamous drop site massacre, Fulgrim and Ferrus Manus met once again and had their final and fateful duel. Fulgrim wielded the weapon he had made for his brother, the Thunderhammer Forgebreaker, while Ferrus did the same with the sword Fireblade. Though both weapons were shattered, Fulgrim proved the victor after taking up his silver blade, but discovered he could not bring himself to kill his brother. It was at this point that the demon bound within the Larena blade finally exerted itself, and Manus was struck dead. Fulgrim was shocked into a clear thinking by the death of his brother. Aghast at what he had done and at the horrific betrayal and carnage around him, in a further moment of weakness, he agreed to the demon's offer to send him to oblivion and allow the warp creature to escape from the sword. It took but a moment for it to possess his body and soul, trapping his consciousness in a tiny corner of his mind. From that moment on, Fulgrim became prisoner in his own form, his existence fully controlled by the Slaaneshi demon. Fulgrim's soul was trapped in the twisted painting of Serena de Angelis. The only person aware of the fate of Fulgrim was Horus, who recognized the demonic possession almost immediately during their next meeting, but considered Fulgrim too valuable an asset to lose. Lorgar and Magnus also became aware of the true nature of Fulgrim upon encountering him. However, in the months afterwards, Fulgrim was able to regain his body by unknown means, trapping its essence in the same painting he had been trapped in. And this was only revealed to his legion when a group of captains led by Lucius realized what had happened to their Primarch and took Fulgrim captive. He allowed them to do this to prove he was no longer possessed, and tried to make the demon release its hold over him through extreme torture. Fulgrim revealed that he had forced the demon out and had been himself for some time, and had chosen to devote himself to Slaanesh fully and of his own free will. When Horus was defeated by the Emperor's children left the trail of depopulated worlds in their wake as they fled towards the Eye of Terror. As their supply of slaves was exhausted, they resorted to raiding the other traitor legions for fresh meat, leading to a series of conflicts known as the Legion War. Fulgrim was seen in combat a century after the heresy at the Battle of the Thessala with Robert Guilliman, the Primarch of the Ultramarines, where he slashed his brother's throat and laid him low with the fatal poison before disappearing from records for many centuries. The Emperor's children claimed that Fulgrim was gifted by Slaanesh with a hidden world of unlimited pleasure for him to rule. Several centuries after the heresy, he was said to be asleep on this world and not active in guiding the Emperor's children. War bands of the Emperor's children, other Slaanesh-worshipping Chaos Space Marines, and cultists and the Imperial Inquisition have sought out this world, but none have returned. Abaddon the Despoiler was able to somehow find Fulgrim and was able to gain the favor of Slaanesh by trading in unblemished Posthian Psyker with the Primarch. During the 13th Black Crusade, it is thought that Fulgrim appeared to massacre Imperial Guard during the cacophony of the Extremis Six. Fulgrim made another appearance at the conclusion of the Ultramar campaign in the closing days of M41. Through the efforts of the Mechanicum, an Eldar Robot Guilliman was healed from the wounds inflicted by Fulgrim. Fulgrim sensed his brother's revival and took the time to possess the Archconsul of Makaraj in order to gloat to Guilliman during his first public appearance in 10,000 years. Through the body of the Archconsul, Fulgrim announces that Guilliman would have many temptations to resist, and that any feeling of self-satisfaction would be his doom. Later, he appeared during the Sabis planet strike, where he slew the Iron Hands captain, Sind Grovarch. At some point in the 41st millennium, Fulgrim was lured back to Estvon 3 by a sonic beacon. There, he was confronted by the sole surviving Loyalist Emperor's children, the dreadnought Rylanor. As Fulgrim tore the dreadnought apart, an unexploded virus bomb was detonated and engulfed the planet. Though Fulgrim's form survived, his pride was wounded. Sometime before M41, Favis Bile managed to create a perfect clone of Fulgrim. Unlike all previous attempts, this clone was pure and uncorrupted, with not even a hint of the warp affecting him. Why this one had succeeded was unknown even to Fabius. The clone aged to adulthood quickly, his Primarch genetic memory allowing him to learn quickly, as well as remember the events of the Horus Heresy. Expressing regret for his actions and downfall, he swore to wipe away the sins of his past and atone for his treason. Fulgrim was taken by Transin, the Infinite, when Fabius betrayed him, fearing the clone would go down the same route as before.